In a world increasingly shaped by secular ideologies, the concept of absolute truth is becoming more fragile and contested as belief in God declines and traditional religious frameworks are dismissed as outdated or oppressive. Society faces a crisis without a higher authority. What defines truth? The idea that every person can have their own truth, their own version of reality, may seem empowering at first, but it quickly leads to chaos, confusion, and division. This crisis is particularly evident in debates over gender, where facts, biology, and long-standing norms are often rejected in favor of personal identity and subjective feeling. When a society detaches itself from the belief in a divine moral lawgiver, it also unanchors itself from fixed standards of right and wrong, truth and falsehood. Without God, moral and existential truths are left to the individual or the majority, which means they can change from generation to generation or even moment to moment. What was considered moral a decade ago can be labeled hateful today. What was regarded as a fact of nature can be redefined by ideology. In this shifting landscape, consistency is lost, and people are left wondering what to believe, who to trust, and what is real. The growing confusion around gender is a striking example of this. Once considered a biological reality, gender is now widely promoted as a fluid, self-defined identity. Anyone who challenges this view, even respectfully, is often met with outrage, cancellation, or accusations of bigotry. The irony is stark. Those who claim to champion tolerance and inclusivity often refuse to tolerate differing views. In a godless society that claims to uphold reason and science, we now see those very tools being sidelined when they conflict with popular narratives. This selective approach to truth is not only dishonest, it's dangerous. In the absence of religious belief, many turn to science for answers. Science, they argue, is objective and neutral. But science alone cannot answer moral or existential questions. It can tell us how the world works, but not why we are here or how we ought to live. When society loses faith in a higher purpose, life becomes a matter of individual preference. What feels good becomes what is right. What is popular becomes what is true. In such a climate, people no longer seek truth. They seek validation. And when everyone seeks only validation, truth becomes irrelevant. This erosion of truth has far-reaching consequences. It affects not only how we understand gender or identity, but also how we build laws, educate our children, and shape public discourse. When truth becomes subjective, trust collapses. People no longer believe in institutions, in leaders, or even in each other. The social fabric begins to unravel. Without shared values or agreed upon facts, we lose the ability to have meaningful conversations or resolve conflicts. Every disagreement becomes a personal attack, and every debate turns into a battlefield. One of the most powerful roles of religion has always been to offer a foundation for truth that is higher than man. It teaches that truth is not something we create, but something we discover. Something given by God, not invented by society. Even for those who struggle with faith, the acknowledgement of a moral order greater than ourselves creates a sense of humility and responsibility. It forces us to look beyond our feelings, desires, or identities and to align ourselves with something eternal and unchanging. In today's world, however, many reject this view. They see religion as restrictive, outdated, or judgmental. But in casting off divine authority, they also cast off the anchor that has grounded civilizations for centuries. The result is not liberation, but disorientation. People feel free to define their own reality, yet they also feel more lost, anxious, and divided than ever before. Your mental health crises are rising, trust in institutions is falling, and people are desperate for meaning in a world that tells them nothing is sacred. What we are witnessing is not just a cultural shift, but a spiritual void. The crisis of truth in a godless society is not about denying facts. It's about denying the source of truth itself. And until we return to a place where truth is honored above popularity, where moral courage is valued more than personal comfort, and where God is recognized as the ultimate authority, this crisis will only deepen. A society that walks away from truth walks toward collapse. Reclaiming truth requires humility, courage, and the willingness to stand firm even when the world stands against you. In an age where conversations around gender identity and belief systems dominate public discourse, the freedom to question prevailing narratives has become increasingly controversial. What was once a hallmark of a healthy, democratic society? Open debate and critical thinking and respectful disagreement is now often met with hostility. The fear of being labeled offensive, intolerant, or even hateful has created a culture of silence. Individuals are discouraged from asking honest questions, sharing differing viewpoints, or challenging dominant ideologies. This environment does not foster progress or inclusion. Instead, it promotes conformity through intimidation. The right to question is slowly being replaced by the demand to comply. When people no longer feel safe to question societal changes or popular beliefs, the very foundation of freedom of speech begins to erode. Across universities, media platforms, workplaces, and even family discussions, people are becoming increasingly cautious with their words. The rise of cancel culture has made public shaming a powerful weapon. A single tweet, an unpopular opinion, or a misinterpreted comment can lead to personal and professional ruin. Careers have been destroyed, reputations tarnished, and voices silenced. Not because of hatred, but because of questions that challenge ideological norms. One of the most sensitive areas where this is seen is the discussion around gender identity. The evolving definitions of gender, the use of pronouns, and the push for new policies in education, healthcare, and law have raised important questions that deserve to be explored. What is gender? Is it biological, psychological, or purely social? Should children be introduced to complex gender ideologies at a young age? Should sports and facilities be separated by sex or gender identity? These are legitimate questions that many people from all backgrounds are asking. However, raising them often leads to backlash rather than dialogue. It is not hatred to seek clarity. It is not bigotry to want to understand the implications of rapid cultural shifts. Yet, society has developed an environment where disagreement is equated with discrimination. People who hold traditional, religious, or scientific views about gender are frequently silenced, censored, or labeled as transphobic. But true tolerance is not measured by how well we treat those we agree with. It is shown by how we treat those who think differently. A free society must allow individuals to express disagreement without fear of losing their livelihoods or dignity. This climate of fear does more than silence individuals, it creates intellectual dishonesty. When people are punished for asking questions, others learn to keep their doubts hidden. They say what is expected, not they truly believe. This kind of societal pressure creates a false consensus. It appears as though everyone agrees, not because they genuinely do, but because disagreement is dangerous. In such a world, truth becomes subordinate to ideology, and critical thinking becomes a threat. History has repeatedly shown that pressing free thought never leads to genuine progress. Movements that demand obedience rather than understanding often end up breeding resentment and division. Real progress happens when ideas are tested, debated, and refined through open dialogue. If gender identity, like any other belief or framework, cannot withstand questions, then it is not strong. It is fragile. A strength lies in the ability to defend beliefs with logic, evidence, and compassion, not in silencing opposition. Some argue that allowing open discussion might cause harm or offend vulnerable communities. While the intention to protect others is valid, shielding ideas from criticism does more harm in the long run. It prevents growth, hinders understanding, and fosters division. People can learn to speak with empathy and listen with humility without surrendering their right to question. True unity is built on understanding, not forced agreement. The freedom to question is essential for personal growth, scientific inquiry, and social development. Without it, society stagnates. Ideas must compete in the open, not be protected by censorship. Everyone, regardless of their background or belief, must have the right to ask questions, express concerns, and engage in meaningful discussion. This does not mean all opinions are equally valid or immune from critique. But critique must be met with reason, not repression. The freedom to question without being cancelled is not just about speech. It is about courage, dignity, and the future of an open society. We must resist the urge to silence and instead choose to engage. We must create a culture where people can speak their minds, learn from one another, and grow through respectful challenge. Only then can we truly claim to be a society that values both freedom and truth. The question of whether morality can exist beyond religion is one of the most profound and pressing issues of our time. As societies around the world become more secular and traditional religious beliefs decline, the moral frameworks that once guided human behavior are being reevaluated. Many people today argue that we no longer need religion to be moral, that human beings can build ethical systems based on reason, empathy, and shared values. While this view may seem modern and progressive, it raises serious questions about whether morality can truly stand without a higher authority, or whether removing religion risks a slow but certain collapse of our moral foundations. Religion has historically provided a universal structure for moral understanding, whether through Christianity, Islam, Judaism, or other belief systems. Religious teachings have offered clear definitions of right and wrong, rooted in the authority of divine being. These moral codes were not based on personal preference or cultural fashion, but on a belief in eternal truths handed down by a higher power. This structure gave people not only a set of ethical principles, but also a reason to follow them, because their actions had consequences beyond this life. The fear of divine judgment and the hope for eternal reward created a powerful motivation for moral behavior, even when no one else was watching. In contrast, a secular worldview often replaces divine command with individual autonomy. Morality becomes a matter of personal choice or societal consensus. Concepts like fairness, human rights, and justice are upheld not because a divine being decrees them, but because they are seen as beneficial to human well-being. While this approach appears inclusive and rational, it lacks a fixed point of reference. Without a higher authority, what defines right or wrong becomes fluid. What is considered moral today can be redefined tomorrow, depending on public opinion or political influence. This shift toward moral relativism is already visible in contemporary culture. Practices that were once widely condemned are now celebrated, while values that were once universally upheld are now mocked or discarded. The lines between good and evil, truth and falsehood, have become increasingly blurry. People are encouraged to live their truth and follow their heart, even if that leads to actions that would have been considered deeply immoral just a generation ago. In such an environment, morality becomes less about principle and more about preference. The danger in this lies not in freedom itself, but in the absence of moral anchors. When society disconnects from the idea of a higher moral law, it also loses the ability to judge actions by anything other than human opinion. And human opinion, as history shows, can be dangerously inconsistent. The same societies that once upheld slavery or genocide did so based on what was considered acceptable at the time. Without a fixed moral compass, there is nothing to prevent future societies from embracing equally destructive ideas under the guise of progress. Another challenge of morality without religion is the issue of accountability. In a religious worldview, people are accountable to a higher power who sees all actions and intentions. This belief creates a sense of internal discipline and moral responsibility. In a secular world, accountability is limited to human systems, laws, social norms, and peer judgment. But these systems are fallible. Laws can be unjust, norms can be corrupted, and people can be biased or blind. Without a belief in ultimate accountability, individuals may be tempted to act in their own interest, especially when they believe they can avoid consequences. This is not to say that non-religious people cannot be moral. Many atheists and agnostics live lives of great integrity, compassion, and justice. However, the question is not about individual behavior, but about the sustainability of morality on a societal scale. Can a civilization remain morally grounded when it removes the very foundation that once gave morality its weight and authority? Can human reason and empathy alone provide a stable and enduring basis for ethical behavior, or will they eventually bend under the pressures of self-interest, cultural change, and moral fatigue? A society that seeks to maintain morality without religion must find a way to instill moral values that are not subject to constant revision. It must create a system that can inspire self-restraint, foster justice, and protect the vulnerable, even when doing so is unpopular or inconvenient. This is a monumental task, and one that religion has historically fulfilled with remarkable consistency. To discard it without offering something equally powerful in its place is to risk moral collapse in the name of freedom. The future of morality depends not just on what we believe, but on why we believe it. Without a deeper foundation, ethics can become a hollow performance rather than a meaningful way of life. For a society to thrive, it must look beyond the moment, beyond the culture, and perhaps even beyond itself. In today's world, the call for respect and inclusion has become central to public discourse. People are encouraged to honor each other's differences, whether they involve race, religion, sexuality, or gender identity. This push for mutual respect is, at its core, a good and necessary pursuit. A society that treats its members with dignity and compassion is one that can thrive. However, this noble goal is increasingly being distorted into a demand for unquestioning agreement, where reason and fact are sacrificed in order to avoid offending someone's feelings. While respect is vital, it should never come at the cost of truth, logic, or open dialogue. Respecting people as human beings does not mean agreeing with everything they say or believe. True respect includes the ability to disagree without hatred, to challenge ideas without dehumanizing the person who holds them. Yet in many circles, particularly when it comes to discussions about gender and identity, disagreement is automatically branded as disrespect. If someone questions the concept of gender fluidity or refuses to adopt certain language or pronouns, they are often labeled as hateful or ignorant, even if their objections are based on scientific facts or sincere beliefs. This creates a culture where reasoned debate is replaced by emotional reaction and intellectual inquiry is silenced out of fear of being attacked. A growing problem is that emotional affirmation has started to replace logical conversation. If someone says they identify as something, regardless of whether it contradicts biology, tradition, or reason, others are expected not just to respect their right to identify that way, but to affirm and endorse it. Failure to do so is framed as violence, discrimination, or a form of erasure. But affirmation is not the same as respect. Respect means treating someone with dignity even if you disagree. Affirmation means agreeing with their view of themselves, regardless of whether it aligns with reality. Demanding affirmation of personal beliefs at the expense of reason creates a dangerous precedent. It places subjective feelings above objective facts. In any healthy society, reason and truth must serve as the bedrock of understanding. Science, philosophy, and history have long relied on the pursuit of truth, even when that truth is uncomfortable or unpopular. When facts are discarded in order to protect feelings, we lose our ability to have honest discussions about real issues. If a man identifies as a woman, the law may respect that choice socially, but biology does not change. Chromosomes, reproductive anatomy, and physical traits remain rooted in reality. A society that pretends otherwise is not being compassionate, it is being dishonest. Furthermore, bending to accommodate feelings does not foster long-term mental health or societal stability. While kindness and empathy are essential in dealing with people experiencing gender dysphoria or identity struggles, real support must also be grounded in truth. Compassion without truth can become enabling rather than healing. A person may feel better in the short term when their self-perception is affirmed without question, but this can come at the cost of long clarity and mental well-being. People deserve both empathy and honesty, not one at the expense of the other. There is also a deeper consequence to discarding reason in the name of respecting it. Silences those who disagree. Individuals who raise valid concerns, whether about women's sports, children undergoing irreversible medical treatments, or the redefinition of legal terms, are often shut down or vilified. Their arguments, no matter how logical or well-reasoned, are dismissed simply because they challenge popular narratives. This is not progress, it is intellectual censorship. If we truly value diversity, that must include diversity of thought. Respect must be a two-way street. Just as individuals deserve to live without harassment or hatred for who they are, others deserve the freedom to speak truthfully, to question, and to disagree without being punished. Mutual respect does not mean we abandon reason. It means we commit to treating others fairly even when we do not see the world the same way. A society that prioritizes emotional sensitivity above factual clarity will eventually find itself unable to make sound decisions in law, education, healthcare, and culture. To truly honor human dignity, we must hold on to both compassion and truth. We must be able to say, I respect you as a person, but I do not agree with your view, without fear of being silenced or shamed. Respect is not about surrendering logic, it is about engaging with one another honestly and humanly. Without reason, respect becomes flattery, and flattery does not build strong foundations. Only a balance of truth and compassion can.